So I want you to think for a moment. Think of something that the television, the commercials, social media tells you you need to live. You need it. And if you don't have it, you will be miserable. You'll be short, you'll be fat, you'll look like me. Think of something that the church tells you that you need. And if you don't have it, if you don't do it in a particular way, you will die. You will lose your salvation. We live in a world that tells us all the time what we need for life. What we need to live, what we need to thrive, to survive, to flourish. And a lot of those things, they are lies. We don't actually need the best and the fastest phone. We don't actually need food from the right grocery store. We don't actually need that particular new cut of clothing or shoe or jacket. We don't need the biggest car because the roads are a danger and somehow if we have a really big car, we'll be safer. We don't need this liturgy. We don't need to do the liturgy in the particular way that we Episcopalians do it. We don't need to read the scripture out loud. We don't need to dress up in bling. We don't need to light candles. We don't need to sing these hymns. And sometimes the call of Jesus is to come along and tell us we don't need those things. We think we need them. We're sure that we need them. We are 100% sure that the things that we love and surround ourselves with are essential for our survival. And sometimes God comes along and says, no, you actually don't need that. And usually that's pretty painful. Usually that's a really painful moment in our lives. And we resent it, and we're angry. We're angry at the people that we love around us because they're not giving us what we need. We're angry at the church because it has failed to do things the way we think that it ought to do it. We feel lost. We feel abandoned. We feel disrupted. This gospel is not particularly good news. It doesn't feel that way to us. It feels disrupted. It uses extreme language. You will hate your mother and your father, your brother and your sister. And remember, these are the words of a good Jewish man who understands that one of the top 10 commandments is honor your father and your mother. But we also know that the history of the work of God, all of these stories in which God shows up and works among a people, also divides people. It divides families. It sets them against one another. And it often does that because, frankly, we're just loving the wrong things. We're loving things that are not of God. We're loving our own way of doing something. We're loving our own particular possession. We're loving our own clothing. We're loving our own practice. We're loving our own beliefs, and we are 100% sure that if we give those up, our life will fall apart. And so we hate We hate one another. We're angry. The fallout of the election of Donald Trump was not actually terribly surprising to me. It wasn't surprising because I think what he did is unmasked, made very clear lies that we as a culture have actually believed for a long time. We believe that wealthy businessmen must have done that right, must have earned their wealth well. We honor wealth and successful business people more than almost any other thing in our culture. We fundamentally believe that there's certain people who deserve it and certain who don't. And that generally falls along the lines of how much money you have and the color of your skin. And how much money you have and the color of your skin actually tend to go together in this country. And so, when Donald Trump wins an election and gives affirmation and voice to something that is ugly in our history as a nation, our history as a people, our culture that we have formed, when he gives it voice, some people are suddenly like, whoa. The naked truth of the anger and division and us versus them that he gave voice to, that he affirmed, was rightly horrifying to people. And for some who believe in their bones that the way of life that he represents is the way of life that gives them hope, they were all in. They were all in. Because frankly, I think they believe a lie. They believe a lie about who gets to have power, who gets to make decisions, who should have money, who should have comfort. And the fear is that they will lose everything that they have. They'll lose their way of life. I think they will. Thank God. But I think some of us who put ourselves a little bit more on the progressive end of things, we will lose too. There are things that we hold on to that are a part of this vision of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness that aren't actually a part of the vision of God. We believe in that autonomous, free person, that person who can do it themselves. How many of you, as you can't do it yourselves anymore, struggle with shame? How many of you feel terrible knowing that there may be a time when you can't get up out of your bed by yourself? How many of you struggle to ask for help going to the grocery store? How many of us hit a hard point in our lives and we do not talk about it? We do not share that our child doesn't speak to us. We don't share the ways in which our family hurt us. We don't share that actually the reason we moved jobs is because we kind of blew it at the other job. Because fundamentally we have bought the lie that we are supposed to be able to do it ourselves. We're supposed to be able to walk on our own 2 feet. We are supposed to not need other people. And yet all of the stories of God from creation on say that we are in this together. We need one another. We need community and relationship. We need it. And when we don't have it, we come apart. Our minds fall apart. Our hearts and our souls and our bodies fall apart. We are not made to be independent from one another. And yet all of our culture is set up to tell us that. That's just one example. And it's not that freedom is a bad thing. It's not that the ability to do it on your own is a bad thing. It's just not the whole truth. And so we fight against it. The truth is, the Episcopal Church likes to be very proud of its current progressiveness, but that has actually taken a while in the United States. And if you've been following anything about the Anglican Communion worldwide, it is still a point of tension. I cannot go and be a priest in many other parts of the Anglican Communion, many of them because I'm a woman, and more of them because I'm a queer woman. It took us a while to come to that, and sometimes we're not always all that good at practicing it. We're not good at living it out. But something has come along. I think the Spirit of God has come along to begin to break some of those things that we hold on to, that we believe that give us life. But that breaking is hard. That breaking is hard, and it causes us to hate and be angry at one another. It makes Thanksgiving dinner conversations with extended family sometimes a little bit awkward. It means we all think about, what are we going to say or what are we not going to say? Do we want to pick this fight right now? Do we not want to pick this fight right now? I think that we're living in a moment of history right now where so many of the things that we cling on to are being revealed for what they are. Lies, falsehoods, towers without a foundation. Is it Nicole Hannah, the author of the 1619 Project? Hannah Jones, thank you. I was like, what's the last name? Nicole Hannah Jones talks about the way in which her father flew an American flag outside of their house. And she didn't really like it as a teenager because it was the only black house where an American flag was flown outside. And she was like, I don't know about this. And she said that as a teenager, she was really embarrassed by it. But that over time, what she learned from her father is that the reason he flew it was not because he believed that this country was actually a place of life, liberty, and happiness, pursuit of happiness for all, but because from the beginning of our history, the people who have called this country to be more of that promise have been black people. From the beginning, as the Constitution was being written, as the Declaration of Independence was being written, it was black people who were saying, you know, we're not free. Maybe you should think about that, Mr. Jefferson. And persistently and consistently said, this is an aspiration. It's a hope that we have. And she makes the argument early on in the 1619 Project that feminism, which is how I entered into the picture, that's where I started to engage with the lies of our culture. Feminism, the fight around sexuality, all of these actually start with the reality of African Americans pointing out quite consistently, we're not free. That promise isn't for us. You need to make it for us. And so her father flies the flag as an aspiration, a hope. Because he was a veteran. He understood the reality. He wasn't a fool. We are called to an aspiration, even as Christians. We don't always live it well. We don't always live it perfectly. And the process of getting there often sets us against people that we love and people that should love us. And love and hate go together. I don't hate people that I don't like, right? If I don't like you, or if I think you're fine, I don't really hate you, even if I think you're an idiot. I think a lot of people are idiots. Maybe I shouldn't admit that out loud. But I don't really hate you, because I don't like you that much, right? You're like, whatever. You're just a person. It's the people that I Boy, when I get mad, I'm like, I hate you. That's what I feel. And sometimes the gospel of Jesus calls us to hating the things that we think give us life. That's what Jesus is talking about. Sometimes we identify those things and we need to put them away and we need to reject them. And maybe those that we loved who are saying something or doing something horrible will come around. Maybe they will come around when they have died and they face God. The gospel means you need to count the cost. It means you need to take seriously. This is not a religion for the comfortable. Despite every effort we have done to make it a religion for the comfortable, Christianity is a religion of discomfort, of challenge. It is a prophetic shift and change in who we are called to be and what we are called to love and what we think is going to give us life. And we need to think about that. Everybody in this room has thought about that at some level. Some of us were baptized as infants and had to think about that as we got older. And some of us may just be doing this at some level because it's what we've always done. But the reality is, to be a follower of Jesus is to sometimes put at odds with those things around us that we were sure gave us hope and gave us life. It means coming to the hard realization that maybe it isn't doing that anymore. And we need to find another way. We need to become a different kind of person. We need to grow and change. So I don't know what popped into your head as I was talking about this. I don't know what niggling little image is just sitting back there in this back little right side of your brain. Or kind of hit you right here in the gut, and you're like, oh, whatever, I can think about that later. Think about it later. What is that thing that you suspect might not actually be as life-giving as it was? And know that God doesn't call us into something that brings hatred and division just because we're supposed to hate. That is not it. It is because we are called to life. Real life, abundant life, the kind of life that a God who knows us from the beginning, knit together in God's glorious and incomprehensible knowledge. We are each made known thoroughly by God to be something beautiful and unique. Hands of God, the heart of God, the feet of God in a world that loves and gives life. And whatever it is that you are hating or struggling with and thinking that it is going to give you life and love, and it turns out maybe it's not, know that on the other side of that, of the other side of identifying and learning to live without it, putting it aside, is a God who wants to give you more life, more love, more hope, more faith, more joy. It is the fruits of the Spirit that tell us where God is. And sometimes the cost of those fruits are high. But the fruits are what is always before us. And so may God give you hope and faith and joy and life and love as you count the cost of what it is to be